And we're going live. We're going live. This is Molten. What are we calling myself now? Molten Chats. I don't know. We chat. Hello. Hello, everybody in there. Hello. This
Hello.
is me and Martha. Hello. Please let us know that you can hear us in the chat just quickly, just so that we know that we can kick off and everything's working. You can see us. You can hear us. That kind of thing. That would be great if you could do that for us. And we'll just drum our fingers for 30 seconds. Hi, Skulldrazer. Is it only you in here today?
Oh,
It's good to see you. So yeah, anybody out there, give us a wave, let us know that you can hear us, and then we can crack straight on with this exciting evening of chatting. Okay, so far, thanks Jim. That's great. Does that mean you can? Good, thank you. Great, welcome.
nice.
So, in that case, we will we'll give it a go. So, good evening. This is Molten Chat, and this evening I'm chatting with Martha Bahr, also known as Panic Girl. Do say hello. How you doing?
Hello. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, doing all right. Another Sunday evening. Here we are, a little bit earlier than normal, which is good. No bad thing. I've been having far too many late nights with these sorts of things. But we're here to talk about Superbooth, to talk about Modular, talk about making music, performing, that kind of thing. I think is the idea. You're very welcome in the chat to ask questions. We may ignore them, we may not. We just don't know how that's going to go. So do say hello or talk amongst yourselves, and hopefully we'll be entertaining enough for your Sunday evening. So, how do you prefer? Do you prefer to be called Panic Girl? Do you know, in social situations, do people go Miss Girl, or you know?
Miss Girl sounds very, very nice. No, I think Martha.
Martha?
Martha.
Oh, I'm
You
never going to
know,
do that, am
that's
I? I'm
nice.
going to mess that up totally. So, but never mind.
Just
Never
as you
mind.
prefer. Doesn't matter.
So how
Miss
has Super?
Panic.
Yeah, Miss Panic. So how has it? How has Superbooth gone for you? Have you enjoyed the coverage on a whole? Do you think that the internet has pulled off Superbooth?
I think so. Of course, it wasn't the real thing like in Berlin, like being there with all those people and being near all those people, having a beer in your hand and just saying hi to everyone you cross who crosses your way. But still, I'm so happy they pulled it off and they made a digital version because I just thought it would, it
Mm.
wouldn't happen and nothing would happen online. So I was super happy to hear that, and I watched as many videos as I could with my little child around, but he enjoyed watching some of them too. So and yeah, I watched every video on the Superbooth page
Hmm.
and the Heimbach streams and some of the Sonic States
Hmm.
streams, but not all of them. So
There's a
yeah, and what
lot.
did I? Yeah, that's yeah, we had to watch them while we were having dinner and having lunch, and so my husband and my son also know everything
Yes.
what is going on. Yeah, and I think they did a great job with also with Andreas Schneider doing all these little moderations in between. I like that very much. And yeah, the performances were great. One of the performances which blew my mind was the theremin player.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have seen that one. I
No,
thought it was
I've got an awful lot of catching up to do. That's part of the drag of working and then doing these chats. Is that not only do have I got my job to do during the day, but I've ruined all my evenings because I'm too busy talking to a few people as opposed to getting a better larger view of things. So I've got some catching up to do, which I hope to do sort of probably next week, I imagine. But yeah, tell us about the theremin.
yeah, the theremin player. What is she called? Caroline Eick, I think. She is she's already quite popular with her theremin concerts and is touring a lot, I think. And yeah, and that was the first time that I catched a performance of her digitally, and I was just blown away how beautiful and it sounds and how she uses her voice, and
Mm,
also she had like visuals behind her that was it was just perfect. Yeah, uh,
mm. Well, it's
combination of all those things.
yeah, it's one of those. The theremin is one of those instruments that is notoriously well, no, is it difficult? Yeah, difficult to play, or rather, it's very easy to play it badly. And often, I mean, I've played with one in music shots before, and it's just a disaster because, you know, other than doing some kind of sci-fi theme, there's nothing really else. You just feel too embarrassed. But it's one of those instruments that if you can do it well, you can make extraordinary sounds with it.
Hear you anymore? I'm sorry. No, I think you're back.
Yeah, yes, I think you're back. No. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, you know, if just for the benefit of the tape, if we do disappear, which has happened previously on a couple of chats, then just hang around. We'll be back. You know, this technology is extraordinary that YouTube is able to just bring us all back in if it just all goes to hell at some point. So don't worry, just hang in there and we'll be back. But yeah, you did go a little bit still there for a moment, but we're still with it. We're still with it.
Yeah, and regarding the theremin, I bought myself one several years ago because I found the sound so intriguing. But I had to sell it at some point because if you don't play it regularly, it sounded just like you said, just just awful, and just you could just do some effect sounds. And I noticed that you really have to control your fingers very. Just little movements just change the tone so heavily. In my case, maybe I just did it wrong. I don't know. But yeah, I just had to sell it. And she also, what I found surprising about her performance, because I always immediately have the Star Trek song in mind every time I hear a theremin, and she made me forget that. So. She made her totally own thing out of it, musically and also visually. So that was really beautiful.
Oh, that's really nice to hear. Excellent.
And what else? And there was a video of a tape loop workshop, which I found very cool. He will do that's Sasha Haberman, I think was the name, and he will do an online workshop anytime soon.
Nice.
To make where you cut up a cassette, and because I'm not very into all this tape loop stuff, but as I've seen on YouTube, you usually make 2 to 5 second loops with tapes. So you don't have to cut them up really, or just remove the upper part and then record something and then put it back together. And the workshop he's doing, you have to cut it up, and then you have 20-second long loops with the tapes, and that I found very interesting. And I'm waiting for him to announce the date, and then I'll hopefully can participate. That was very interesting. And then of course all the modular stuff that was going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with tape I've always found is, because the large part of my life I've been working in the digital domain, I find the concept of being able to cut tape and splice it together in the right way just completely mind-blowing. It's the same with a piece of vinyl, really. If you look at a record, how on earth is that vibrating that pin and then creating this huge enormous sound? It's just amazing. I can it is magic. I mean, I can understand it in a digital sense, because it's just ones and zeros. It's just it's a piece of maths. But to do it in some kind of sense of reality, I find it extraordinary. I mean, that's silly, really. I'm sure other people think that's just the most natural thing in the world, but for me it feels very strange. But I do enjoy
how you grew up maybe with it, or because I have to think, at my day job at the public radio station, the people who are longer there already, they learn to work on tape for the radio stations, for all the radio features. So they had to take the tapes and play them back during the broadcasting, and then change it quickly, and then a piece of music, and then hear another little interview part and then another news part or something like that. And of course, live microphones were switched in and stuff. But I think that was a whole lot of stress as well back then.
Yeah.
And nowadays you can just, like automate things on your mixer or just press play or something like that. And yeah, it's just, I think, how you learn it yourself.
Yeah, it is. But you had to commit to things. That was the thing. You make a slice on a tape and you've committed to it. There's no going back. And I that scares the heck out of me. Although it is also, it's an avenue that I'm trying to embrace in terms of modular, because modular for me is very much about the moment and about making a decision right there and then, as opposed to having levels of undo or a history or the ability to save anything. So I am slowly embracing those sorts of ideas, I think.
And I think it lets you also work differently. When you can't recreate it, the patch,
yes,
then you really try to put everything you have in there. And if in your DAW, for me at least, if I have tracks, it takes way too long to mix them. For example, I just have to re-edit the kick 1,000 times until I'm really, I really like it. And with Modular, you have your options. And then it's just sounds like it sounds. So
is that how you write? Is that how you end up recording music? Is it a one, press record and off you go, or are you multi-layering and post-production? What's your workflow?
Actually both. So I have my music project Panic Girl, where I'm doing my solo music, electronica, experimental stuff. And with the Panic Girl music, I'm layering my sounds usually. So I record them track by track, sound by sound, and then mix it or re-edit them in my DAW. And though not everything as well, because sometimes I have also soundscapes on my Modular, which I record then in one take. But usually I'm layering things with Panic Girl. And then I have a project called Lucid Grain with Anatol, and that's more, we are you could say a modular duo, band duos kind of thing. And what we are doing is always one take, or let's say we meet and we prepare our sounds, and then we record this one patch about 3 to 5 times, and then just take the take that was best for us, and we just shorten it in the end. So we take out little bits and pieces, because usually it's about 30 minutes long, and I don't know how many people would listen to a 30-minute piece.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting how well that lends itself to our live stream culture that's coming up at the moment. That's the perfect place for you to stick up a couple of cameras and just, with a bit of rehearsal, then just go straight for it onto the internet. I mean, that's one of the things that Modular is so right for. I mean, that's why our Facebook feeds are so full up with people's little tunes and little loops of stuff. It's because it is so easy. You get this sense where you create something interesting, just go, wow, that's really interesting, I must record it and must give it to the world. But to do that in a slightly better way with people who know what they're doing, then that's a perfect live stream opportunity, that is, I think. That's
true. And it's also with Modulars, just that one can take the time to and just enjoy it, like all those ambient artists, where you don't have your verse and your chorus and your bridge, and after 3 minutes everything has to end then, and just have very slowly evolving, very light tunes. It's beautiful. I love that. So maybe I'm doing a live stream sometime.
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, one thing I would say about some of your music I've been listening to is that you appear to be aiming for more of a song structure than some that I've heard. So rather than having one side of, as you say, of 30 minutes of noodling, you do appear to be aiming for some kind of song format. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I would say, let's say it that way, maybe that I'm aiming for song structure more than other ambient, for example,
Hmm.
artists, but less song structure than a pop artist in the
Oh
charts or
yes.
something like that. So
Oh
I'm
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
in between. It was
yeah.
always my philosophy, maybe with because one of my big idols is Massive Attack, and they
Mm.
didn't seem to really care about song structure in the classical way as well, because they made very, very long intros, outros sometimes, or yeah, they had those parts like chorus and intro and maybe a verse or something like that,
Hmm.
but not like, it has to be that long and then 4 bars this, 4 bars that, but they just did it how they liked it for the song, and that always was my philosophy as well, because for example, I love intros. They could be like 8 minutes long and the rest of the song maybe a minute or something like that. And I often heard feedback that I shouldn't do that, and then that people won't listen to long intros, but I usually ignored it.
Yeah. No, well, you should. You should ignore it. I mean, people are. Yeah, I don't know. What do people know? People don't know anything. That's the thing. And we just need to drive down our own pathway. I mean, an intro. If it's an 8-minute intro, that's a movement. It's not just it's not waiting to get to the good bit. It's the good bit all the way in. That's the key to that, I think.
Yeah, for me,
Yeah.
intros are almost always the good bits and the outros. A long fade, and I just
Mm.
love that.
See, that's the pressure of a feeling that you need to do something interesting in the middle. You see, that's the that thing. Everybody's waiting for the drop. They're waiting for the that happening bit that's really gonna do it. But no, I know what you're saying. Great deal. What I would do, just quick, we're just going to drop a minute of your performance, your Superbooth performance in, just so that people can
Sure.
have a taste of what it is that we're talking about in case they're not familiar with your work. Now, for this to work, it requires a certain number of miracles as far as my software is concerned, but I'm just going to assume that it will. And if in the chat, by all means, say you can't hear anything or can't see anything, because that can also happen. So just give us a second. I'll put that in there.
You will wait for
Oh, it's still running. Hang on. There we go. Smooth fade. Did you see that smooth fade?
Excellent,
So yeah,
excellent.
there you go. That's great. That was from a performance you did for this Superbooth, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, yes, that's true. It was so nice to be included there. I already had the honor to perform at Superbooth 2 times
Right.
in Berlin. That was amazing. And yeah, and now on the home edition as well.
Have you performed? Was it inside or outside where you've done your performances at Superbooth?
Both. The first time I performed was in the on the first floor, the big Saal. how is the English word? Big
Yeah,
room.
yeah, the big theatre space thing. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was a little bit scary as well,
Yeah.
but amazing because that was actually my first performance in about, I don't know, 10 years or so, and the first
Really.
one with my modular. And
Wow.
yeah, I was a bit shy before that to go live on stage, but then Schneider even himself called me, asked me, and what do you say when Schneider calls? Of course. So yeah, so I did that, and with Jericho, a fantastic musician. He's so super talented. He does very dreamy modular stuff as well. So I shared the stage with him, and then the second time with Anatole as Lucid Grain outside. Then we
Right.
had a little bit of bad luck because it just during our performance it started raining so heavily.
Oh,
But well, that's how things go.
yeah, yeah, it does.
But
It's
still
also
was nice.
yeah, I mean, it's also a quite unreal situation because people are coming and going. It's not as if they've they're booked to turn up to sit and watch you. They're there for Superbooth, and so there's people walking through. There's people got their pretzel and their beer, and they're walking off somewhere else, and so it must be quite a strange place to perform, I imagine.
Yeah, but also I really enjoyed it as well because it's such a free feeling, and nobody has to sit down now and has to listen,
Hmm.
well behaved and be still, but they just can talk and have their beer and whatever and just go their way if they don't like it or if something else is coming up interesting. So I quite enjoyed it.
Great. So what are the challenges of performing live, as far as you're concerned?
Good questions. I think one of the most important things is that you can hear yourself properly.
Mm. Mm.
I was at the first Superbooth performance. I had not a problem, but when I started playing during the performance, and when I turned in my Jomox X bass, which can be quite heavy, especially in the low end, the PA or more better said, my monitor started really distorting very
Mm.
heavily, and I was very I didn't know exactly what to do in that moment to stop, or I just looked at Jericho, at Sebastian. If he is no, he just went along with his performance, and I had a look into the audience, and nobody seemed to like, oh, what was that, or some wasn't surprised or anything. So I just thought maybe it's just my monitor box which was distorting, and I just kept on going. So I think that is very important for performing live. And with modular, of course, you always have to have maybe some patch cables with you, or a screwdriver in case a module doesn't work. I actually witnessed that with another modular performer, that during his performance on a very huge PA, one of his modules, how do you say, just blew.
Wow.
You really saw a little bit of smoke coming out and
You
a
don't want
huge
that.
noise. You don't want that was crazy. It was such a loud, huge noise on the PA. Everybody was just like, "Shit, what is going on?" Covering their ears, and he was very cool about it. He tried to identify which module exactly it was as quickly as possible, repatched, and then kept going, actually. So, wow, I don't know if I could do that in
No.
live performance. And also for me, I think important is to have like a little bit of structure, so I know with what I want to start, which sound I want to have at first, but also to have some little bit of improvisation
Mm.
during the performance. It depends if it's Panic Girl or Lucid Grain. With Lucid Grain, we are way more improvising. With Panic Girl, it's more really the song structure, and maybe I just have little things that I can play around with.
Mm.
Yeah, but a little bit of a safety net is quite important for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, are you aiming to reproduce your songs you've done on albums, for instance, in performance?
With Panicle, yes, I would say. So maybe not every little detail, but most of it. So because I really spend much time designing the sounds and the transitions and the breaks and
Hmm.
everything, and so I try to really yeah, to translate it into
So
the
so
onto
it was a
stage.
structure based in the desktop machines. I mean, I noticed you had a Digitrack or well, you
An
mentioned a
Octatrack,
Jomox as
yeah.
well. Octatrack, okay. Um,
Hmm.
is your structure based in those, and then the modular works around it? Is that the idea?
Yeah,
Just trying to get an
you could say
idea
that.
into your flow.
Yeah, so I have the Octatrack. Is it the master? Yeah, it's the master clock as well, and it's sending the clock to my Yarns module. That's my
Okay.
MIDI interface, which I love to death. It also has, by the way, internal oscillators and internal sequencing possibilities, which I use almost always. And yeah, and I have like some sounds in my Octatrack, which I'm playing around with on there, and then I have yeah exactly some sounds on the modular, which I yeah
Hmm.
add or and
Yeah. So
also
you
my Domox for drums.
right. Yeah.
Exactly. And what else do I have? I also have a OP1 with me more
Ooh.
often. I take half my studio on stage. I wanted to reduce that actually at some point because it was quite heavy
Hmm.
um, when you're on a plane or something like that, and you can't take that much with you on the plane itself. And but the OP1 is quite small, so that was
Yeah,
still
definitely.
okay.
It's a problem that we run into. I think is that it reminds me of the reason why we went inside the box, why computers were good, because we had all this external gear in the 90s, and then suddenly we realized we could stick it all in the laptop and just take a laptop to a gig. I mean, that's fantastic. The reduction in stress and gear and having to carry stuff, and now that we're spilling back out again, we're kind of stuck in this situation where we're trying to manage the size of our rig because it can spiral out of control so quickly. It can just get ridiculous.
That's true.
I'm not saying that there's an answer to that. I'm just saying it's something that we're very much aware of. I mean, I've been in my live performances. I've gone from a single row up to 3 rows of stuff. You know, like the thing you can see behind me. Half of that I've taken to a gig, and it's just too much. You know, you're going around with a trolley. You're trying to lift this thing around and keep it all in one piece. And I'm very
Yeah,
much
and you also need a mixer, and you also need this, and
yeah.
it just adds up to
It
so
does.
much gear. So
Yeah, it does. But we like it. That's the thing. It gives us something to do with our hands while we're on stage.
yeah,
I mean, yeah. I mean, one of the things
absolutely.
that you do, which others don't, perhaps, which is the use of vocals, which I think is very interesting.
Hmm.
So, was that a conscious decision, or was it just something that happened in the course of your music making?
Good question. I love to sing since early childhood, and I think it was just always just natural to me to
Hmm.
sing. And I always, with my tracks, I thought something would be missing without a voice. So, and I just love it. I just love singing into the microphone, putting tons of reverb and
Yes.
delays and stuff on it, and sounds so otherworldly,
Yeah.
and it's just fun to play around with the voice. It's a very powerful oscillator with which
Yes.
you can play around.
Are you using it, do you think, just as a sound source, as part of the soundscape, or do you think there's something that you want to say? Are you trying to get across an idea?
Now you're frozen quickly. No, I think now it's
Okay.
good again. Yeah.
Shall I ask
Um,
again?
I heard the question.
Okay.
Thanks. I think I usually try to more use it as like the other sounds in my track. I'm also a huge it's a totally different genre, but a Tool fan. I don't know if you progressive metal rock, but
Oh, okay.
it doesn't matter. But, also, that was the first time when I heard a band mix their vocals very, very much the same level as every other instrument, and I liked that very much how they did it. And I questioned then how it was mixed in other tracks, that the vocal always has to be so much upfront, and on top of everything, when all the other sounds are beautiful, like doesn't matter which one, modular guitar or whatever. And then I started to pull my voice back as well and more use it equally like all the other instruments. And as for a message or something like that, I actually these days I don't write lyrics anymore. I just that's my fantasy English I'm just using. Yeah, because I just want to make it like another sound in this collection of sounds.
Do you think that's something we struggle with in electronic music or in modular music? Because there's very few singers, people who sing. There are a few out there, and I often wonder whether we're not really telling our story because we don't have people are not vocalizing songs, or they're not telling stories within modular music, which perhaps is a shame. On one hand, it's a bit like you don't want what is it that we want to hear? What is it that we want people to say to us? What is it that we need to hear from our artists, perhaps? Or do we need to hear anything? Is the music enough? Why do we feel the need to hear some kind of somebody else's story when we're all full of our own life experiences? Oh, I don't know. It's one of those sorts of questions.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I just thought maybe, for example, with those ambient modular artists like Arbeni or Lightbath, they don't use any vocals as well, but they somehow, because nowadays you follow your favorite artists on social media, on Instagram, Facebook and stuff, and there they show how much they ever want to show of themselves, their story. Arbeni as well on Twitter, for example, or on Instagram, he shows the studio, he tells the people how he feels, and I feel very much that his music without vocals is very, very personal. He also often tells how the tracks were created, in which mood, not only with what gear, but also in what mood he was or what he wanted to express with his tracks, and also with Lightbath, for example, and many other brilliant artists. And so every time I hear their music, it feels very personal. It's not really a story like, it's one story you tell in 5 minutes and then it's ended, but more like their whole personality somehow is in the tracks implemented. I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
No, you are. I mean, very much. I mean, that's really, really interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way before, because it's been something which has been rolling around in my head a lot. I come from a singer-songwriter background, standing up in a pub shouting at the moon kind of thing. So I find it interesting the lack of vocals in this music, and I always also very much like instrumental music. It's not to say that, it's just purely something which I find interesting to talk about. And no, you're right, the whole area of social media, the way that people are able to communicate with their audience about their music, I hadn't considered that. That is very interesting.
It's totally different with really like singer-songwriter tracks. I really enjoy that too. Like you really have a small tale you can follow in that song and just dwell into it somehow and dream away. But also, for example, another artist, she's not modular but electronic, she does electronic music, is Sophie Birch. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, but she has an album out, I think it's called Alchemy, which I have on cassette. And this cassette, for example, sounds for me like sunshine, like different nature elements. That's maybe a little bit strange to hear, but if you would listen to the music, I think everyone would know what I mean, because it's like the little particles of the sunshine electronically. It's audible. Then it's really a bit strange, but it sounds like how sunshine could sound like. So that's maybe another way with modular music to express some kind of moods or elements, or I don't know.
No, I think that's true. I mean, one of the early performances that I saw, that when I was starting my modular journey, I was looking for melody, I suppose, because some of the things that you hit straight away is a wall of noise and squidges and farts and stuff. And that's good. That can be good. That can be awesome. But it's also, if you're looking for more melodious music, it can be a bit of a head scratcher. But one of the things I saw early on was Sonergy, I think it's called, by Caitlin Aurelia Smith and Suzanne Kiani. And there, it was the video of it. It wasn't the well, I bought the album subsequently, but it wasn't listening to the music. It was listening and watching their interaction. You know, these two women sat there with their modular things, and it wasn't that they were just playing electronic music and twiddling a few knobs. There was an interaction, a conversation going on within that performance, and there was no singing. There was a few words exchanged and laughter, but it was incredibly emotional. It was very, very engaging. It was completely an act and completely beyond being electronic sound. It was something more than that. So I'm completely with you on the idea that you can infuse this sort of music with emotion and with thought and with intent, and how that can absolutely come across remarkably in these sounds.
Those two are brilliant. They're really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I followed Caitlin Aurelia Smith for a little while. I still do, and find her music interesting. It hasn't always gone the way I thought it would, though. Sometimes it's just, it's interesting how the way that she uses sound, but then she brings in elements of voice, and you get the sense that there's also a dance going on somewhere within what she's doing. It is fascinating. But then at the same time, I can sit down and listen to Annie, for instance, and he just puts a box up on a thing and kind of walks away, and off it goes. It sits there in front of a mountain and makes an extraordinary sound for 20 minutes. And
that's amazing. I love
and
that.
There's soul in that.
Totally. And I also got to know generative music through the modular world. So that was very, very fascinating for me as well. To get to know.
Yeah, to just let something go. See, but that's the thing. To stop fiddling, that's a struggle. I mean, when you're making modular music, because the temptation is, I must move more things. I must keep moving it and then keep moving it. It's certainly, if you're standing in front of people, to be doing nothing seems odd. So
totally.
Yes.
Absolutely. But I didn't knew the genre itself before modular music. I didn't know you had the means to make such a patch, to make such music which is ever evolving.
Yes.
You just program the whole bit and then walk away. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Do you ever do any sort of patch from scratch type music making? I mean, at some point I guess you have to unpatch everything, but is a patch from scratch something that you like to do?
Yes, absolutely. I love unpatching. I think it's one of the most freeing feelings. Especially, I had it last year. I had my case patch for about, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months for my gigs that I played with Lucid Grain and Panic Girl. And then after those months, when I could finally pull the cable, that was so fantastic. And I once I was invited to the Podular Modcast. I don't know if you know that one.
Yes.
With Tim Held. Really like that one. And there's a patch challenge in the end where you get 2 words, like an attribute and a noun, and random ones, and then you have to patch I think you had like 15 minutes or something like that to from scratch then come up with a patch. And when I knew he wanted to talk to me and do the patch challenge as well, then I tried it several times. So because I didn't know how fast I could patch something what sounds good as well. So I just practiced it several times. And it's amazing how fast you can get to some results when you know just what you want. Like if you want something with a kick quickly, then a pad, and maybe then some bleeps and blobs. You can make that in 15 minutes. So
no, I think so. And also, you're there. You're standing there probably with a horrible noise to start with, because you've got to patch something in. You've got to start making a noise, and it inevitably starts off with either a drone or something that's a bit kind of and it's like, right, got to do more things, make it do something. So I like the pressure of that, having to do that live.
I think it's often the pressure, the deadlines, which are quite helpful from time to time.
Yeah, I was talking to Eden Gray on my Molten chat last week, the other week, and she does all her live performances starting with nothing. I mean, she generally has one. Wow. Yeah, she has 1 row or 2 rows of modular, and not really much more than that, I don't think. But yeah, she starts off with a drone and just goes from there, which I find. I mean, that frightens the life out of me, but. I think that's amazing. I think that's totally awesome.
That's really that's crazy. I didn't know that. I think she performed once at Superbooth as well. I was just sitting there and listening to it. I didn't know she was making it from scratch.
Yeah, just makes it up as she goes.
Wow.
but no, actually says that, every day she's practicing her instrument. It's like someone picking up a guitar and just playing. It's exactly the same, because you spend all day patching and unpatching and exploring sound and exploring voltage, going in different directions. And, one should, I suppose, be able to sit down and then just play.
Probably.
Yeah, but no, I would go patched. That's how I normally go to anything. I spend all day working on it and then take it out in the evening and go, this is what I did, and then get lost. I mean, I have problems with. I mean, the only place that I've really performed with modular is at an open mic night. To have these open electronic nights in Norwich, which is my nearest city, and just in some pub somewhere, and you turn up and you do 20 minutes of frantic. Hot, that you can't see anything, you can't hear anything. The monitoring is terrible, the sound system is terrible, the lighting's awful, you can't see anything. Of course, you're standing up and your thing's sort of on a desk and it's too far away, and you can't really. The whole thing is just like the biggest stress nightmare, but it's enormously fun at the same time. You come out the other end drenched in sweat and feeling but it's like, I got out there, man, I took my modular out and I'm
alive.
Yeah, exactly. So
nice.
but yeah, always go patched. At least that's
same for me, definitely.
So what modules would you say are speaking to you at the moment, if any? Is there any particular modules that really have captured your imagination?
Yes, absolutely. So I have some modules which I have for several years now, and some which I also like just trying out new stuff. Mm-hmm. But for example, the yarns module is very, very dear to me because it's a MIDI interface and also has the sequencing possibilities, features, and internal oscillators in there.
So is that your bridge between your modular and your other desktop bits and pieces?
Exactly, yeah. I also it has a MIDI out and MIDI in. So I always connect those. And just let me think, the Renee of Make Noise.
Yeah.
I think that was for me, a game changer, because it was my first module with which I could do generative patches. So that just blew my mind. I just completely didn't know this whole world before modular. So that was just amazing to set the scale at the quantize page, and then just not knowing which note comes next. That was it sounds so simple, but was just
Yeah.
amazing for me. And then let me think. I have some. So my very first case, which I bought about 10 years ago, was a pure Döpfer case,
Mm-hmm.
and all of those modules still work, by the way. It's very good German engineering, I guess. And those are very dear to me too. So the oscillators, I use them still in
Yeah.
every patch. Like the sine waves, that's my go-to waveform. And let me think. The Malgorithm by the Harvestman. He was
Okay. Yeah.
that was his name, and now he's Industrial Electronics. And that's a bit crusher and wave shaper, and I just can't get enough of that sound. This little crunchy. I have to have that sound in every patch, every song that I make, somewhere hidden. And what else? I just have to go through my rows in my head, what I have in there. The Folk Tech, Alter 2,
Yeah.
the multi effects
Yes.
module. I like that very much too. Especially because it has so much dirt in it.
Yes. Yeah,
So
no,
it's
that's
not
interesting because
too
I've never
clean.
come across anyone who actually has one of their modules. They've always fascinated me. I mean, I love the garden things that they do, although
Yeah.
it would be wasted on me, I think. But I love the artistry in it. I love the aesthetic and the look. And it's also odd to me that behind the beauty of all this stuff is this terrible noise. Well, terribly good meaty noise and these crazy effects and things. I find them completely fascinating, and to find someone
Absolutely.
who's using it in a musical fashion, that's amazing.
Yeah, I also know those other modules which can be very noisy and very chaotic and so on, and that's a bit too much for me too. So I know a friend of mine has I think it was the Mescaline. It
Yes.
was a standalone thing, and it sounded beautiful what he made out of it, but it wouldn't be something for me. But the multi effects is the effects sound beautiful, but just with a little bit of noise and dirt in there, and that's what I like very, very much. And what else do I have? I have, of course, the Rings module, but I think that's nothing surprising from a modular artist. Yay, the Rings, and clouds. And just what else? A new one is the Hermod from
Yes,
Squab
from Squarp.
Instruments.
Yeah.
It's pretty new, so I still have to get into it a little bit more. But I seem to like sequences which are not too intuitive to program, like the yarns. The yarns, you really have to read the manual before you. Like you have those layouts. With the yarns, it's that way that you have different layouts which you can choose, and depending on the layout, all the outputs change what they actually output. So and I can't remember that. I always have to read which layout does which output and so on. But somehow I get sequences out of it which I don't get anywhere else. And I think it will be the same with the Hermod, because it is
undoubtedly the Hermod is, I found in my experience with it, one of the most frustrating modules I've ever encountered.
Oh, really? Oh no.
Yeah. No,
why?
But if that's something that's good for you, then yeah, because I mean I can see its potential, because it is an enormously full of potential, this module. I could not, every time I went to it, I couldn't work it, and I would have to go back and look at the manual and do that sort of thing. And so
that sounds perfect to me.
Yeah. So for people who like doing that, that's great. But I got fed up because I didn't. So I'd go to it and go, oh, I'm just not making anything. Oh, sod it, I'll go and do something else, rather than opening the manual. So I haven't yet. I mean, I may yet, I suppose, given it the time. Because it has pages, and there's bits of it that make sense, and then there's just bits of it that I can't. Why can't I do? Why isn't this simpler? you know, but it's enormously powerful. I mean, the 8 channels that you can get going in all sorts of different directions is fantastic, and the layers of stuff. There was just, you know.
And all the
If you-
effects on it, like the random possibilities, are very interesting for me.
Oh yeah,
at least.
there's enormous amount of stuff in there. I would much rather sort of screw it up in a ball and bring out 8 different modules that do the things it's trying to do inside itself that I could intuit my way into, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it
Maybe
is a
the
very
complex.
yeah.
Maybe the complex sequencer from Coma, for example. I think everything is laid out
Right.
in
Yeah.
this enormous sequencer, but it's more to carry around.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, it has a lot of stuff in it. The Hermod. No, I mean, I hope you're very happy with it.
So far, I'm very happy, but
Yeah.
I still have to get more into it.
Yeah,
But I think it's pretty good for me.
Yeah, I need to spend more time with it. As it's one of those ones I put on the back burner and say, I'm going to have a look at you again in some time. But just for now, it's not worth my time. So is there anything that's come out recently that you have a hankering for? You're looking... Do you think there's anything perhaps missing in your rack that you're looking to fill? Or do you think there's something particularly interesting that you'd like to bring into your rack given the opportunity?
It's very a little bit frustrating because I have a list of like 50 modules, which I think I need absolutely.
Oh yes, you need them.
It's really they are all beautiful. They have all super cool features. I would like to have like a wavetable oscillator, for example. Like the Piston Honda is also on my list. Then also I think I'm the only person on earth who sold their Morphogene. And now I'm not so sure if that was the right decision. Yeah. So maybe I have to get one again.
But it's interesting though, because there is something in using a module that either resonates with you or doesn't, you know, and we can't all like the same stuff. I mean, I sold Clouds. I quite famously didn't like Clouds, which I know. See, same reaction. And it's just that there's some things that you get on with and you click with and you go, yeah, this speaks to me or speaks through me or something. Where there's other modules that you know should be awesome, but you can't. There's just something about it that's not working for you. So I think that's a common sense that we get. And thank God that there's such a good second-hand market, you know, because that allows us to keep moving these things through without losing too much money in the process.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm very happy about that too. And what is on my list as well, maybe from not a module yet, but in the Heinbach stream there was this device called Herbs and Stones, or was it the company?
Liquid Foam.
Yeah, and I thought it was just too yummy not to bookmark.
Yeah, no, that was a weird one because I mean I saw it going, that's gonna be some box of noise, you know, it's gonna be more, you know, it'd be a very Heinbach box where it's kind of complex and noisy and explorative, and then all this acid came out and you're just going, oh well, that actually sounds really good fun. So I was totally taken with that. And I believe he is working on a Eurorack version. So
yes, he said. I think he mentioned it. I guess. By the way, I think I also need I have the Zoya from Empress Effects as the desktop. I love it. It's really amazing and it's so easy to use. I didn't believe it, but it's really easy to remember also, and how to. It's a little bit like Tetris.
Tetris, yes.
Tetris. For me, and I think I will need it as a module as well. What else? I could go on next 2 hours.
Well, no, that's fine. That's what we talk about.
And also, I saw that ALM is having what was it called, Coupe case or something like that.
Yes.
Their first standalone case.
Yeah, a complete system
very
with
interesting.
a bit of everything. Yeah, because they've released. I mean, it's been quite a slow release of new modules over the last year or so, hasn't it? With the sampler thing, whatever it is they call it, and those other bits and pieces that are making up that whole row of stuff. Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah,
absolutely. And what was else interesting me?
Do you worry about polyphony or stereo, for instance, in modular? Stereo filters seem to be the module of the year.
Yeah, that's I heard that too. Not yet. Anatole, the other part of Lucid Grain, is very much into all this, into stereo, and I think I should go there too. I'm just not too concerned with it at the moment, but I guess it would really, the music would really improve. Though I guess for live, mostly it shouldn't be too much stereo, let's say that way, so that not the people on the right side don't have another concert than the people on the left speaker in extreme situations. But yeah, I think it would improve things. So I guess I will go there too at some point.
Yeah. It's odd somehow that we talk about mono and stereo, because mono seems to be such an old-fashioned idea, and yet nearly all of modular is mono. You're always ending up with just a single output. I mean, it's probably in stereo ultimately, but you don't often have control within that field, so it's just coming out as a stereo signal, not coming out in any kind of stereo field. So I mean, personally, I don't ever think about it, because I'm not even standing between my speakers. My speakers are on one side of my room and my modular's on the other one, and it's rarely up very loud anyway. I'm just kind of fiddling, and so I'm not paying attention to anything as far as listening to it properly, sitting down and mixing. I mean, when I was working on computers all the time, that I'd be obsessed with it. You know, everything would be, you know, Hendrixing itself all over the place, and everything would be panned properly and placed in space. But I don't think about any of those things with modular. I don't, you know, I'm just interested in the vibe perhaps more than the finished, the polish. Not interested so much in the polish. And stereo,
and the process.
Yeah. I'm involved in the making of the moment, as opposed to worrying about whether I'm moving something a little bit over here and then a little bit over there, a little bit over here. But, you know, it also means you've got to double everything. You need two of everything.
Yes, 2 cases and...
Oh, yeah, now there's a thought.
Just double the case and then...
Yeah, double everything up. Then you can have your left and right concert, so people can come to a concert twice in order to sit in different places.
That would be good.
Yeah, see, now we're talking.
It's an interesting idea. Maybe just then 4 cases and quadrophonic, what do you pronounce it in English? No, like
quadraphonic.
Concert?
Yeah,
exactly.
Surround sound, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Possibilities are endless.
Yeah, but see, the problem is because we're all trying to do all of this ourselves. Once you start getting ambitious like that, you need other people. You can't do the whole thing. You're going to need a sound engineer, someone playing with the mixer and messing that about. So you can't be doing with that at the same time as patching, at the same time as trying to trigger your light show, same time as, you know, trying to be
controlling everything with an iPad. Oh.
Yeah. God darn it. Yeah.
Crazy ideas.
It is. So how easy is it to collaborate with your friend in Lucid
Grain?
Yes. Have you found that easy? Is that an easy thing to do?
Actually, yes. We met, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago at a local meetup here in Munich, Modular meetup. And then we just decided, I like your music that I heard online. He liked my music that he heard online. Just try and jam for once. And that first jam, we didn't know what the other one had prepared. I had my sounds and scales, and he had his. And then we met, and we just quickly adjusted the tone so everything will fit. And
so
the tempo as well.
You tuned up then, at least. You tuned up to each other. Right. Yeah. Okay, good start.
we did that. And then we started jamming, and it was just, wow. And we were both like, wow, that sounds really, really cool. And it did. The very surprising thing for me is as well that my sounds, when I listen to my...
Uh-oh. I've lost you there again. We seem to be paused for the moment. I seem to have lost Martha, which is a shame. She was about to explain something completely awesome, Now the chat has gone, it's suddenly caught back up with us. So are we both still moving? Are you still with me? Is it just, unfortunately, Martha that I've lost? Let's hope that she can come back to us in a moment. Just give us a moment and let's see what happens. You can still let me know. Just give us a wave in the chat to make sure that you can still hear me. That would be great. And we're just going to pause for a moment to see if Martha can come back to us. You see me? Okay, good. So, all right. So we're still trucking along. We're just unfortunately lost Martha at the moment. Let me see if I can recover. What I will do, let me put her back on here. Oh, there you are.
Hello, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Oh, look at that, we're back. Hooray.
I'm so sorry.
No.
Back again.
Yes. Now, you were telling us something really important.
Yeah, I think
You had just gone like that because we had you frozen like this, as if you were saying you're about to make an emphasis about, you were talking about...
like Lucid Grain and how
yes,
we
that's
work
right.
together.
Collaboration,
Yeah.
working together, yes.
Yeah. So what I find most surprising and intriguing about our collaboration is that the sum of our sounds sound totally different than our sounds separated. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I would never be able to make such music alone, even if I tried, because when we jam, it's just such a amazing flow that we are in. That's really amazing. And it's the complete first album was made like that we never knew what the other one had prepared. So we just made whatever we wanted, and we patched whatever we wanted in our case, and then met and jammed. So that was, and I think you can really hear this spontaneous and a little bit wild vibe going on on the first album.
Is it on Bandcamp? I'm just having a quick
Yeah.
look.
It's it was released on Modularfield. That's our label.
Yes, yep.
I'm
just putting
very
a link to chat to your
cool.
current album, and I'll just see if I can
Cool,
find
nice,
that
thanks.
one as well while we're at it. Lucid
Grain, yes, Modularfield, and yeah, that's a fantastic label. It's really rare for me that I like almost every artist on a label, and that's the case with Modularfield. So can really recommend that.
Rise and Fall, is that the...
Yeah. Rise and Fall, and
there we go.
And the second one is Sustain and Release. The second album.
Oh yeah. Yes. No, I've been listening to some of this. Yeah, well, very interesting.
Oh really? Oh nice.
Yeah. So let me stick that up as well.
So that was surprisingly easy for us to make music together. It's just sharing a clock, maybe if we need it. If not, it's also okay. And with the second album, we worked a little bit differently because we send us little snippets of our sounds beforehand, so the other one could prepare more properly. Yeah, but I think the vibe is pretty similar. Because
what was occurring to me was that we are trying to do a lot. I mean, I think in Modular there's two issues perhaps we run into. One is trying to fill the space with too much sound. There's often too much going on. I mean, when I find that when I listen to something relatively simple, or if you listen to any music really in any genre, it ends up being four parts. You know, there's some percussion, there's a bass line, there's a melody, and there's something filling it in between. As soon as you stack on more and more and more of that, it tends to lose its coherence, or it just becomes something of its own, I suppose, and that can be okay. But we often can go too mad with lots and lots of different sounds coming in. The other flip side to that is it can be very thin. It can just have a single bass line not doing very much. So I'm really interested in what you say about when working with somebody else, how those two things mesh together, and how I can see how they can feed each other. If you both bring a relatively minimal thing, how well those can sit. I think that's really interesting. Because you're right, you can't do everything. You can't come up with everything. And also because your modular is so restrictive, you're often restricted to a couple of lines of something, And so to repatch and find another sound is difficult, whereas just somebody else to bring something into that's very interesting.
Absolutely. And I think it was also very fortunate for us because I was mostly, for example, at the first album, delivering those melodies, a little bit dreamy melodies, for example, and percussive sounds. And Anatole is very, very good at playing with the morphagene, for example.
Right.
He has a very good taste and hand for noises and making them sound very interesting, also with the voices. He often uses some podcast files or radio plays or something like that, and then feeds it into the morphagene and makes it part of the whole track, the whole composition, in a very interesting way. And so we don't get too much in each other's way anyway, because naturally he's doing he also likes doing bass lines more than I do, for example, and that's how it naturally just we have our roles.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I love the idea of collaborating with someone. I think it's difficult. I think we're so power mad. No, we like. I mean, part of making electronic music is that you are in control. You're not part of a band. You're not having to play the guitar in somebody else's band and it's always the singer who gets all the attention and that kind of thing. You are controlling the whole lot. And so I think collaboration is interesting, difficult, I would suggest, but probably worthwhile. But it's finding that right person. I mean, I've often collaborated with a singer, and that tends to work really well because there's very defined roles, I suppose. I do all the hard work, of course, and then she just turns up and sings beautifully. But of course, she's been learning her instrument for a very long time. But it does get more interesting when she, Hannah Claire, this lady that I collaborate with, when she contributes stuff into that space as well, and that then develops a whole other thing. And that's always interesting, but it's hard to find people to collaborate with, I think. So you've got onto a real winner there, I imagine.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it has you have to have a similar vibe. You have to have similar taste. It's really, really hard to unless it's really you have you just want this phrase on a violin played by a very trained musician and you ask him to play these notes. But if everyone has his compositional roles, then it's getting way harder.
Do you think that there's a point where the music will become a living for you? Because as you said earlier, you're a sound engineer, you work at a radio place, you also write for Sound of Recording magazine in Germany. Do you foresee a time when your music will start to become your living?
I hope so, and partially it is actually my living because for the for the radio station here in Munich, I'm composing
Right.
music,
Oh, yes, right.
like 90% of the time. It's not my Panic Girl music or Lucid Grain. It's as you can imagine, someone calls and says he or she is doing a feature, like at the moment, for example, she's doing a feature about the pandemic, about Corona, and she needs the whole music package for it. So
So
I'm
you've
not
had
free.
to write Corona music. You've had to write COVID-19 music. Fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't have to be some kind of worthy over thing about saying, "Oh, I'm so sad. I'm in lockdown." You've actually had to write it as a backing for something else. See, that's fantastic. That's the right opportunity. That is.
But also a challenge. I remember the first time I had to write for a difficult topic. A really difficult one was about some Nazis here in Germany, which were on trial here, and I went also one day to this trial just to get an impression of what was going on, what was being told in the feature then, and I was really disgusted by those people and so angry, so I wanted to transport it in my music, make it very, angry and disgusting and so on. But then the next day when I listened to it, it was, of course, way too much because the topic is so heavy. You can't make the music heavy. And that's the whole trick with topics like that, which are a little bit like sad or difficult in some way, that you have to pull back a bit with the music, because otherwise people just start crying maybe in the first 5 minutes and have to turn off because it's so depressing. Because the sound is so depressing and the topic is so depressing. So, yeah, that's a challenge. That's challenging for itself, but yeah. So, but it's also very interesting to really compose something different than with Panic Girl or with Lucid Grain. Really on a topic. I also do, for example, for the children's features. Also from time to time. Like about one topic was flying. What is flying? What animals can fly, and so on. And then just how to get that into the music was very fun as well. So yeah, I really like that job. And that's also it's not my Panical music, which is making a living so far, but in whole with my work at the radio and summits.
So what's your go-to instrument then if you're having to compose something for? I mean, I'm assuming it's not modular necessarily, or is it?
For the radio?
Yeah. What do you end up writing on?
It's usually, unfortunately, not my modular, because I have pretty tight schedule, or so I have usually like 6 to 9 days for like the title music, the end music for the ending, then some like 3-4 music tracks for in between, for the in betweens, then maybe some, how do you say that in English, like Trenner, like little short ones, just to
segues.
To make clear and
segue. Yeah, would that be the right word?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and for all of those, including mixing and mastering, I have like 6 to 9 days usually, so I don't have too much time to experiment. Like the first 2 days I experiment, but then I have really to quickly get out some sketches to just get a feedback. Is it the right direction? Is it totally not what they liked? Or do I have to start anew or something like that? And then I can proceed with the composition. So yes, so the modular is more for my Panical and Lucid Grain projects.
Yeah. Shall we have a look in the chat, or ask the chat if they have any questions for you? Would that be a good moment to do that?
Sure.
So, chat, if you're in there, any questions? Any questions for Marta? I'll throw that in there. So yeah, if you've got any questions in the chat, then do throw them in, and we'll see if we can get to them. Otherwise, so why modular? Why did you? Before you answer that, the ARP 2600. Tell us about that.
I waited a bit for that. Yes, it was. I wanted back then when I got it. I actually wanted a VCS3.
Okay.
AKS, but it's way too expensive as well. But a beautiful machine. I actually had the honor to visit the Peter Zinoviev, who invented it, with the designer. I made an interview once with him in Cambridge. That was very exciting and interesting. But so I actually wanted a VCS3 from EMS, and I was just browsing around the internet then where I could get one, and then the ARP 2600 popped up with a reasonable price, and then it had to be.
When was this? How long ago was it?
I think about 6 or 7 years ago already.
Okay.
Roundabout, and I'm very. It wasn't my first choice, actually, but it has such a fantastic sound. It's every time I put it on, every time I listen to the sound, I really still get goosebumps. It's just it has such a deepness. That's just fascinating. You can't get it with any other instrument. Not a DAW, not a modular, not. It's just, it has all this dirt in its sound, all those little movements, because it's so old, I guess, because it's not perfect, because it's amazing. Really, really great instrument. And also the layout of the ARP, it was, I think, designed also for schooling people.
Look, see, there it is. That's why I was reminded. I was looking at it
Yes.
here. Yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, and you can see there the descriptions on the synthesizer itself. So it's very you can really learn while patching something or while designing your sounds. So that's also very, very helpful. And the filter is amazing. I'm totally spoiled. No filter ever will. It's very hard for me to find another filter that sounds so good, because especially when you crank up the resonance to maximum and then play around with cutoff, it's just like a eerie ghost is somewhere in the room and singing for you. It's crazy. I have to do a video on that maybe at some point.
No, definitely. It sounds like a very romantic instrument. I mean, it's a big thing, of course, at the moment with the Korg reissue and that other company potentially bringing one in for the rest of us to play with. So it's very, very interesting time for that instrument. I mean, how have you always been into synthesizers? Is it something? Was there a moment when that happened for you?
It was not really a moment. I think it was when I studied at the SAE Institute.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then there was the topic synthesizers as well, and then I got my first one, the Virus TI.
Yeah.
And
Good
then I
choice.
slowly got more and more into it, and with modulars, I still remember. That was about 10 years ago when I went to the local music store here in Munich, just to browse a bit, what that means, that you want to buy something. And then I went there to the synthesizer department. And then there, I remember, like in the film, I saw that this silver Doepfer case, and just stood there with my mouth open. What is that? I need that. I don't care what it is. I just want it immediately. And I took it with me then this afternoon.
Wow.
And I didn't know how to patch it. The guy there who sold it, he made me a patch with all those modules and explained it to me. But I have to admit I didn't understand half of the things he said, and I didn't unpatch it for, I don't know, 2 months or so. I just, with the knobs first I tried with just with the knobs and the sounds, and then at some point but back then you didn't have so much knowledge online as well. So you had
No.
your dub manual, which is, it's very there's very much to read, but it's partially not so easy for me to repatch it then, or to translate it to the real world then. But yeah, and, it was a bit more difficult to get into all of that without all those resources, without all those videos now,
Yes.
tutorials and whatever you have online now. It's fantastic nowadays. I think you have so many choices at hand these days with modules that's really overwhelming. But the knowledge you have now is also very, very cool to
Yeah.
have now.
There's a language barrier, almost, in that there's a certain vocabulary you have to understand just to even begin to get into modular,
absolutely.
and it doesn't translate immediately from a synthesizer. Synthesizers you can work without any knowledge at all. You can modular also, of course, but in trying to understand it, in trying to have trying to have a conversation about modular, there's all sorts of stuff that then comes up that you've not come across. I had not come across in any other industry. It has its own language you have to cope with.
Oh, secret language,
Yes.
modular language.
Okay, so a couple of questions from the chat then. Chent asks, why Panic Girl? Why the name Panic Girl?
Yeah, I searched for a name for a very, very long time back then, and I'm very bad at thinking of a good name. And then I had a beer with a friend of mine, and we just the names popped up, and we just laughed at, oh, Panic Girl, that's funny. You could just name yourself Panic Girl. Yeah, I think people would remember that. And then I just said, okay, I'll take it. So I'm not really a panicky person, but I think I just like the ring of the name, and I thought it sticks a bit, because everyone asks why. She doesn't seem so like she would now run out of the room screaming or something like that. So maybe it sticks then.
Yeah, no, I think it does. I think it relates well, I think, to the subject matter. I think it's a very electronic music type name. I think that it works. Omri asks, how do you approach the composition process? This is obviously no small question. How much time do you spend just fiddling around, if at all? And also, how do you learn a new module?
So I'll start with the last part of the question. I love reading manuals. That's the first thing I do. I really love that.
Who reads manuals.
Yes.
Yes.
And I learned that at my studies at the SAE Institute, when I learned like Pro Tools and Logic, and those are really those big ones. And I was such a noob back then. I really had problems like with importing audio into the program. I didn't have a computer for so long. I felt like I really have to learn very, very much. And I just wanted to learn every bits and pieces of every program that I could get in my hands. And I read the Pro Tools and Logic manual, I think both 2 times, and really did all the things, all the tips and tricks. I tried them out, and that really helped me so much. And I just stick with that till now. So I always read the manual and look up maybe a longer version in the web or something like that. So, and then I start fiddling around and just trying out things. And what was the other part of the question? How I
how much time you spend fiddling? I mean, also Felix from Tuesday Night Machines asks or expands on that question to say, how is it different what am I trying to say? How is composing, for instance, for radio, how is that different to the Panic Girl stuff? Is it a different process? How do you work those processes?
Absolutely different, I would say. With the work for the radio, I have to be more clear in my head what I want to go for, because I have the topic, I have an audience, and I also have the people I work with. So I ask if they have some audio files for me, to get me just an impression of what they want to have in the end. Because at one point I had, for example, a colleague saying that she would like to have an electronic dark vibe, a track which is electronically made and very dark. And then when I showed her my composition, she said, no, that's not really what I want. I would like more the vibe of the other track you did for the other feature. And the other feature, I used only violins, cello, harp. So everything was like natural instruments. And since then, I always ask for, maybe you have something in the direction that you would like to go me for, just to have an impression, even if it's not really what she wants, but just the direction. And and for the radio work, I also have, it's way more specific what I have to do, what it should sound like. And and it's way more of a collaboration. So it has to fit the vibe and what the one who ordered the music, what she or he would like to have for her feature. And with my music, I'm way more free, of course. I like to fiddle around way more. That's often my starting point, that I fiddle around and then, oh wow, this is beautiful, and I have to make a whole song out of this beautiful sound that I make. And then everything has to then everything evolves, and then it's just a flow into which I get while composing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are there any artists you'd like to collaborate with? Asks Tanuki D. Anyone you'd like to collaborate with?
Yeah, many, I think. Like the big ones, Massive Attack. So if you're hearing us, of course. But I love very much Bonobo as well. Music of Bonobo. I don't know if you know him. He's making very dreamy electronica music. And then from the modular world, many like Arbeni, Heinbach, Lightbath, Helene Vogel-Singer. She's an amazing composer, which is also now on Modularfield. Nathan Moody. I think so many are amazing. So, and I also have, I don't know if you heard of it, I just started a new label with female electronic artists.
Oh, great.
Only.
And
the first compilation will come out this year. And on this compilation there are only modular female artists. And for example, I would love to collaborate with all of them, maybe at some point. Or
I've been listening to Helena actually on Facebook. She's had a whole she seems to be releasing a series of stuff from a few months ago that's constantly coming up in my Facebook feed. Amazing. I mean, beautifully shot as well as beautifully sounding, which is, totally. For some reason we need to be able to do both. We need to be able to make it look fantastic in the camera, because it is a very aesthetic machine when you're talking about modular.
Absolutely.
And she situates herself in some brilliant locations, and all of that's going. That's really good.
That's really great. Good.
Other questions down here. Do you still have the Virus TI?
No, I sold it.
Do you? Oh, that was one question I saw. Then I've lost your voice when you're singing. Are you processing through the modular? If so, how, when, and how?
No, not through the Modular, but nowadays through the Zoya from Empress Effects.
Oh, nice.
I often have like a tremolo-like effect on it, and I tend to drown it in reverb and delay, and just have to always a little bit less, so it's not too much. But I really like those effects.
Excellent. Well, there's nothing else sensible going on in there, I don't think. There was one more I saw that I now can't find. Oh, do you include other instruments like acoustic instruments, or is everything electronic and synthetic?
From time to time, yeah, I have a marxophone. That's not too common. It's like I don't know. It's a wooden piece, like this approximately, and then it has strings on
Okay.
it, and sounds very, very nice. That I use from time to time, and then just maybe like I have a guitar, but I don't record it too often these days. But maybe I'll change that, and yeah, of course, like sometimes shakers or some kitchen, like I don't know, forks or a coffee machine, and then I'll use that sound. I very much like using found sounds or atmospheres from the street, or I often use that in my tracks. Or
Do you go
there's
out?
a
Do you go out with a little recorder and record?
yeah, from time to
Yeah.
time too. And there's also there are several websites, I guess. But I use Sound Cities. It is the most where you can. It's a map of the world, and you can zoom in, and then little triangles pop up where you can click, and these are recordings of the people from that place who just recorded something on the street, in a coffee shop or a supermarket or whatever. And yeah, then I just can
Interesting.
use that for my tracks.
Nice. So what is next for you then? I get it. I'm starting to feel that we've been doing this for an hour and a half. It's perhaps we'll start drawing it in a little bit. What's next for Panic Girl, or for you in any direction?
Good question. With now with all the live concerts cancelled, and now everything going into the digital domain, I think I'll do some live streams or some more videos as well. I think that would be interesting. And then, of course, my next Panicle album is already half finished, I
Oh,
guess, or
great.
2/3 already. And another Lucid Grain album is also on its way. And yeah, it's I think it's for everybody quite interesting how things will evolve in the next month. What will change, if more and more will be online, more content, more offers, maybe that will be interesting. Yeah, and I'll just see what happens.
Great. I mean, live streaming, I think, is something that you can definitely do. I mean, with the Superbooth video we saw before, was that all done in one take, or did you do a bit of post?
For my performance was done in one take, and I recorded some other footage which I overlaid there, like from my Modular, some close-ups, and from my Jomox, for example, that I did in the post process. I'm not really good with video editing and stuff. That's just the little bit what I learned at the SAE Institute. So.
Well, we all have to become experts at anything. There's no excuses anymore. You just have to become expert video editors, expert live streamers. You have to be experts at everything. That's always the problem, I think. That's always a problem. Just reach over here. I can highly recommend the album.
You have it.
I do. It's also beautiful inside as well. I don't know if they're all this colour, but mine is. Look, there's a lovely white vinyl, which is lovely. It's well worth seeking out, you people out there, because it is fantastic and is available on Bandcamp. Is there still vinyl left? You still got vinyl to sell?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have some left. Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
no
you
worries.
so much.
Yeah, looking forward to new releases. That'll be fantastic. So thank you so much, Martha, for spending time with us here. It's been fascinating to hear about your process, your compositional things, the things that you get up to, and just talking about modular generally is always a joy, because it's such an area of passion, I think, for people. People just like feedback I'm getting about these chats that I'm doing is people just like hearing people talk relatively intelligently about these things. It's interesting. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. It was very
You're
nice.
So welcome. You're so terribly, terribly welcome. So just to highlight what's coming up before we close is, what do we have coming up? Tomorrow I have Bob Rogue from Black Corporation. That will be during the day. It'll be a lunchtime thing, I think about 1 o'clock, because he's in Tokyo, so time is different over there. So we're doing that tomorrow. Then on Wednesday I'm talking to Tenderfoot Electronics out in Taiwan. So again, that's another lunchtime gig. And then we'll finish off on Thursday with This Is Not Rocket Science, usual time 8:30 on Thursday evening. So that's this week. What happens after that, who knows? But this is all kind of to do and influenced by the Superbooth 20 Home Edition. And this is my contribution to this conversation, this talk, this live streaming thing that we're doing. So well, should we leave it there then, do we think? I think so.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so thanks for that. Thanks for being with us in the chat. I hope that's been interesting for you. And join us again soon, and we'll say goodbye, and I'll press the button over here. And thanks ever so much for watching.